This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
It's Golden Sense in full flight for the wire over flashback, and Golden Sense have won the Santa Ana Derby.
Orb has won the Kentucky Derby. Fortune Derby will take charges surging, and it's a photo finish. It's too close to call.
And Animal Kingdom wins the Dubai World Cup.
Macho Man!
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Welcome to the Monday morning edition of Racing Across America. I'm Brian Nadeau, filling in for Seth Merrow. Seth, a little under the weather the past few days. If you're watching, buddy, hopefully you get well soon. We'll get you back on here. So it's kind of a little bit of a calm before the storm as we Preakness week begins with the big race on Saturday, and we exited some stakes races on Saturday at Belmont, getting ready for the Belmont Stakes. We'll look into that later. We've got a couple guests for you today. Mike Penna from the Horse Racing Radio Network will join us first. Mike does a great job, does a lot of big events, and he'll be obviously in Baltimore with his crew this week, nonstop coverage. And we'll also have Bob Ehalt who writes for ESPN.com. Bob's been a long-time writer for horse racing, over 20 years. So Bob's going to join us, give us some thoughts about the Derby, the Oaks, as well as the impending Preakness, and his thoughts on California Chrome, who, a lot of people kind of talked a little down about his Derby effort just because it was so slow on figures. So Bob's going to be here. He wrote an interesting column for ESPN.com as well about how, visually his Derby was very impressive, but yet on figures it wasn't all that impressive. So Bob's going to stop by and give us a few minutes. But first of all, let's look back on some news and notes for the weekend. I think the biggest story of the weekend on the human side for certain is the somewhat bittersweet announcement by Tom Durkin that after 20 years as the voice of the New York Racing Association and 43 years behind the mic in general, he's going to be hanging it up August 31st at Saratoga this year. So certainly Tom, well revered across the country and one of the most beloved men in racing. Certainly going to miss Tom, and he's had some great race calls throughout the history. He's been really a long and storied career as well. Tom started back in 1971, I believe, and he's been the voice of the Triple Crown, Gulfstream Park, the first voice of the Breeders' Cup up until 2005. And he did the Triple Crown from 2001 to 2010. Just countless. We could fill up a whole hour of Tom's great race calls. And as we go into break, we'll get into one of his better ones, Rachel Alexander winning the 2009 Woodward up at Saratoga. Just really a seminal moment in racing. So probably Tom's most famous race call, or maybe the one that, I don't want to say put him on the map, but certainly the race call that really made him a household name was Cigar winning the 1995 Breeders' Cup Classic at Belmont Park. I'm sure by now, if you're a racing fan, you've heard it before, the unconquerable, invincible, unbeatable Cigar when he capped that 9-for-9 season in 2005, drawing off of the 95 Classic at Tom's home track at Belmont Park. So I really think that is the call he'll probably be remembered for. We've heard that so many times, and it's been used so often. Tiz Now winning the 2000 Classic at Belmont, another great race call shortly after the 9/11 attacks, and Tom's great call. Tiz Now wins it for America when Saki, the Dubai World Cup winner, came to him in deep stretch, and he turned him back. Durkin, he just has a penchant for the moment, and I think if I've been lucky enough to meet him and know him a little bit over the years, and he's really the same off camera as he is behind the mic, and I think that's a testament to the person he is and that jovial kind of spirit, that all-encompassing great guy that he is. And for me personally, I think the best part about his race calls is that he's never put himself above the race, no matter what the moment. And Tom's called 8 potential Triple Crown bids that have all been thwarted. Obviously the voice of the Triple Crown, the voice of the Breeders' Cup. He's called so many great moments all across the country, and especially here in New York, where we kind of have a home court feel for him. And I don't think Tom ever really put himself above any call, and I think that goes a long way of talking about the person that he is and the announcer that he is. So Tom, there's no doubt Tom will be missed. He's going to hang it up August 31st, which is the penultimate day at Saratoga, and basically said he just wanted a day off to enjoy the races that last and final day. So I'm sure it'll be a summer full of fun, some sad moments, but I know we'll all be looking forward to hearing Tom's last call on that final Sunday of the meet. Some sad news as well under the human variety. Rafael Bejarano, arguably the best jockey out in the West Coast, countless number of jocks titles out there, was injured in a one-horse spill this weekend, sadly, and he injured broke a collarbone, broke a rib, and broke both shoulder blades. So Bejarano, according to his agent Joe Ferrer, is going to be out indefinitely, and it sounds like that's going to be several months. So no doubt the jockey landscape out at Santa Anita, and certainly maybe even Del Mar this summer as they get down to there in July, it's going to really alter the landscape, maybe a little trickle-down domino effect out there. Bejarano, not only arguably the best jockey, but he's a big-name rider that, gets top mounts. He shows up in stakes races, well sought after. You could easily see him ship in at Saratoga. And, we here in New York, he rode a lot of races for Bobby Frankel back in the day when he was riding here on a regular basis. So there's going to definitely be some sorting out in the California Jocks colony. Bejarano, he'll be missed out there. It's unfortunate, and I still think we're in the early stages of his injury. So right now the prognosis is maybe a few months. Hopefully it's not any more than that. And, we've seen it here in New York. Guys like Junior Alvarado just came back, and sometimes it takes a little while to get your traction, and frankly, sometimes you get passed by a little bit. So hopefully Bejarano, I know he's got a great track record in California. He's won countless jocks titles. So hopefully he'll be back sooner rather than later, and back riding winners as he's prone to do. Looking ahead, Saturday we've got the Preakness. Obviously, it's a big race week in Maryland. Action kicks off with a big stakes card on Friday with the Black-Eyed Susan, the amped-up Black-Eyed Susan. The Pimlico Special is back as well. And then, of course, Saturday, just a monster card down there. Captivated by the Preakness, which right now the field's a little in flux, but we're looking at 10, 11 horses. And like I said, we'll get some thoughts on that from Mike Penna, Bob Ehalt a little later. But right now we're looking at 10 or 11. And the one thing that, to me, that really jumps out in this Preakness, and we talked about the pace in the Derby. I know I was on with Seth a few times, and to me, the Derby pace really looked fast and contested and heated, and it didn't turn out to be that way. Everybody kind of took back a little bit, and they went 47 and change. On paper, when you look at this Preakness field, Ring Weekend was confirmed this past weekend for Grand Motion and the West Point boys. Bayern is going off his disqualification to second in the Derby trial. Obviously, the Derby winner, California Chrome. Pablo Del Monte, who scratched out of the Derby, even though he drew in, he's going. And then Social Inclusion, who to me is every bit as talented as California Chrome. A big third in the Wood Memorial. If he had gotten second, he was beaten just a neck by Samrat out of that spot. If he had gotten second, he would have made the Derby. Well, he's going to go after scratching out of a little minor stakes at Belmont last week for a small foot injury. So all apparently he's going and he's healthy. And what that all means is the pace almost has to be hot, maybe even supersonic in here. Ring Weekend wants to go. Bayern is pretty one-dimensional. Social Inclusion, one-dimensional. And, California Chrome is as fast as any of them on paper. Of course, he showed in the Derby. He can settle and relax a little bit. So if nothing else, the pace of the Preakness is going to get really hot. We'll talk to Mike about that, I'm sure. Horses like Kid Cruz, a Stone One Cold Closer is kind of interesting, at least to me, on the face of it. He's not nearly as fast as these other horses on paper, figure-wise, I mean. But, he's got to win over the track. He's shown he can do it. The distance shouldn't be a problem. So, to me, on paper, this Preakness, I said this about the Derby, and it certainly didn't transpire, but this Preakness on paper might just fall apart. And I'm not going to necessarily pick against California Chrome, but it might be one of those times where you pick against everybody else who wants to be up close and look for an exacta from someone coming off the pace. Also, let's just briefly, we'll look back, and again, Mike and Bob will get into this as well. Big stakes weekend at Belmont, which was getting us into the Belmont Stakes, which was 4 weeks out from Saturday. And they ran the Peter Pan on Saturday as a prep for the Belmont. Tonalist, very impressive, drawing off, showing hot speed early, drawing off late. Commissioner and someone had to be second kind of an effort. So Tonalist really goes to Belmont, to the Belmont Stakes as a son of Tapit. You would think he'd want every inch of a mile and a half. So he looks like one of the ones. We'll see, you know, everybody's waiting now. Commanding Curve, Danza, Wicked Strong. I would think Medal Count will show up as well. So the Belmont really looks to me like it'll be a better race than the Preakness, especially with some Derby horses that are letting the dust settle. You know, All Words was maybe California Chrome, a little bit of a tired horse. So we'll see what happens at Belmont in 4 weeks. But if nothing else, Tonalist announced his presence on Saturday as a legitimate contender. And then Sunday, they had 3 big stakes races highlighted by the Grade 1 Man of War. Imagining won it for Shug for the third straight year with a third different Phipps horse for Shug. Point of Entry, Turf Champion, 2 years back, won it. And then last year, Boisterous, and now Imagining. He walked on the lead. Real Solution ran second. He looked like he might have hung a little bit. Certainly didn't like the pace. So I'm not really sure going forward if the Man of War will have a huge impact on the souped-up Manhattan, which is now $1.25 million and is sure to attract an all-star cast. Also, Palace Malice tuning up for the Met Mile on Belmont Stakes Day. Just dominant again. He's clearly, to me, the hands-down best handicap course in the country right now. He shortened up to a mile on Sunday and just drew off by almost 10 lengths in the Westchester in a dominant performance. He's going to go to the Met Mile as the one to beat. And then finally, 50 Shades of Hay, a come-again winner of the Ruffian, which is going to be a prep for the Ogden Phipps, which is shaping up so far as the race of the year with possibly close hatches, definitely Beholder, definitely Princess of Silmar. It's just a dynamite matchup. Who I look for out of the Ruffian is Grace Hall, who was 5-1 yesterday, dead on the board off, I believe, an 8-5 morning line. Ran hard every step of the way, making her first start for Belmont, first start off a year layoff. She ran every step of the way into hot splits, and to me, moving forward, she's the one to look out for out of this race. So that's kind of a recap. We'll get into some more news and notes later, but I want to, as we go to break, we're going to hear a great race call of Tom Durkin, Rachel Alexandra beating the boys up at Saratoga in the 2009 Woodward Stakes.
They're in the gate. And they're off. Past the point on the outside. To tear it down toward the rail. Rachel Alexandra is right up there with them. And Cool Coleman on the outside. So they race into the first turn here. Rachel Alexander will duel with Daterra. On the far outside, past the point is right there. And then behind Cool Coleman. A break of 3. Back to It's a Bird, another 3. Back to Bulls Bay, who's on hold early on here. Asiatic Boy, and another 7 to Macho again, who trails the field. Oh, the first quarter was 22 4/5 seconds. There'll be no free ride for Rachel Alexandra. They're making her work for every step today. Daterra has sent her through a punishing opening quarter mile. Past the point on the outside, runs along in 3rd. In behind them, Cool Coleman is 4th. It's a Bird 5th on the outside in Bulls Bay. 46 2 was the half mile. Calvin Burrell was able to slow that pace down just a little bit, but they move into the far turn. There's a half mile to go. Rachel Alexandra still holding that lead. Past the point, trying to get to her. The lead is now a length. On the inside, it is Cool Coleman running in 3rd. It's a Bird is 4th. Asiatic Boy is launching a bit from the back of the pack, and Macho again is firing too. They're coming to the top of the stretch. It is still the filly in front. A dramatic stretch drive awaits in the Woodward Stakes. On the outside, here's Bulls Bay, and Calvin Morel imploring his filly for more. And Rachel Alexandra holds on to the lead. Bulls Bay is 2nd. Macho again is making a tremendous run for the back of the pack. Rachel Alexandra, Macho again. They're coming down to the finish. It's going to be desperately close. Here's the wire. Rachel won! She is indeed Rachel Alexandra the Great, beating Marshall again here, and Father Beck, Bulls Bay was third. The time was 1:48.1. Rachel Alexandra raises the rafters here at the Spa.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTV.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTV.com. Log on today.
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right. The 2014 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes, and a seat at the 2015 Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month's contest is the King of the Hill on June 14th. So sign up today, online at CapitalOTB.com, or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. With a newly designed and engineered internet wagering platform, enhanced video streaming, additional funding options, and 3 new individual wagering opportunities, CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. Combine that with our all-new mobile website. You have 2 of the most powerful, innovative, and advanced wagering platforms available today. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Saturday, May 17th is Preakness Day at Pimlico, and the best place to catch all the action is OTB TV and CapitalOTBBet.com. It's one of horse racing's most exciting days, with a full card of stakes racing totaling more than $2.5 million, all leading up to the second jewel in the Triple Crown, the Preakness. To be part of the action, head down to the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany. Stop in at one of our Easy Bet or branch locations, or log on to CapitalOTBBet.com.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Brian Nadeau filling in for Seth Merrow today, and happy to be joined by someone I've known for quite a while, Mike Penna of the Horse Racing Radio Network. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Brian, thanks so much. You sound like an old pro with this TV stuff.
Well, that's highly debatable, Mike, but look, we'll see what happens. But Mike, obviously a busy week for you. I just want you to kind of maybe just brief the audience on what you guys do, and I know your crew's heading down to Pimlico tomorrow, you said, and obviously last week you had some good shows as well. So just kind of hit on what you're doing and maybe what you have in store for Preakness Week this week.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's it's a busy time, as you would imagine. Just as the horses are on the Triple Crown, we're on that Triple Crown trail ourselves. Heading to Preakness tomorrow. I'll be in Baltimore starting tomorrow afternoon. We'll start our coverage of Preakness weekend on Friday afternoon. We'll actually have coverage of the Black Eyed Susan and Pimlico special on Friday, and then we'll come back on Saturday with, it's about 6 or 7 hours of coverage on Saturday. Our Equine Forum show will be live from Pimlico next Saturday morning from 8 to 10, and then at 2 o'clock in the afternoon we kick off our coverage of Preakness Day. We'll cover the undercard races. We'll have a little Preakness preview show mixed in, and then, of course, our exclusive national broadcast of the 139th Preakness Stakes. So a lot of things to look forward to in Baltimore next weekend, and it should be a lot of fun.
Yes, it sounds like, Mike, the old adage, you'll sleep when it's all over. It sounds like a pretty jam-packed week down in Baltimore, huh?
Yeah, it will. It will, but that's what it's all about this time of year, and we're very fortunate to be able to be in that position to do it. And I know you've been on this trail for a long time as well. And you wake up and you count your blessings that you're able to do this each and every week, every year, and you're able to go to these big events and provide this kind of coverage. And can't wait to get up there and get started.
Sure. Now, Mike, I know you do shows during the week as well. Talk to me about last week. Any nuggets you can maybe relay to the audience? Did you talk to any important players that maybe gave you some good information leading up to the 139th Preakness?
Yeah, Saturday morning, it was actually a jam-packed show. Todd Pletcher joined me to look back on the Derby, talk about his 4 horses in the Derby, and then look ahead to the Preakness. We talked about the Peter Pan Stakes and his runners in there. It was really, really good stuff from Todd, and that interview is now posted on our website at horseracingradio.net if people want to go back and listen. Luis Contreras, who is going to be aboard Social Inclusion next Saturday in the Preakness, he joined me as well. Nice talk with Alan Sherman, the son of Art Sherman. He's been with the Derby winner California Chrome in Louisville ever since he won the Derby. Had a nice chat with him on Saturday morning, so people can go back and listen to that interview. And Terry Finley from West Point Thoroughbreds was also with me, and had a lot of fun catching up with him and looking ahead to the Preakness with Mike Gaffigan from Pimlico. So a lot of things to listen to if they go to the website.
Oh, it sounds great. That sounds great, Mike. Yeah, Mike Gaffigan does a great job down there at Pimlico. Mike, talk to me a little bit about your thoughts exiting the Derby, and you mentioned you talked to Art Sherman's son, and so we've heard some reports that maybe California Chrome was a tired horse exiting the Derby, and obviously Art said he doesn't want to run him back on 2 weeks rest, which we know he is going to. It's just a necessary evil of the Triple Crown. Talk to me. Did he mention anything? Did you get any, maybe lingering thoughts that maybe this horse is on the downward trend in his cycle at all? Anything to that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, it was the exact opposite. I actually asked Alan that question. I said, okay, how did he come out of the Kentucky Derby, and compare how he came out of this race to the races in the past? And he said that he's really bounced back from it really well. He was very happy with how he's doing. But I did ask him, I said, okay, give me your biggest concern going into the Preakness Stakes. And the first thing he said was the 2 weeks and that quick turnaround, because of the fact that he's never done it before.
Sure.
And you just don't know until they actually do it how they're going to handle it. So that is a big concern for them right now. But if he can handle that, and he does run as we expect him to run next Saturday, look, I mean, he's going to be very, very difficult to beat.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, Mike. On paper, he's legitimately odds-on, not only because of his talent, but frankly what the rest of this field has or hasn't done, for that matter. I don't want to give away all your interview, Mike, but just talk to me a little bit about Jose Contreras on Social Inclusion. I know he was scratched last week out of a Gulfstream, 2 weeks ago now, out of a Gulfstream Park minor stakes. Was there any concern there? I mean, to me, it just seems like a mighty ambitious way to get to the Preakness when maybe everything hasn't worked according to plan.
Yeah, it is ambitious, and the one thing I asked Luis, and keep in mind, he has never ridden at Pimlico before, so This is going to be a whole new experience for him. He's hoping to ride on Friday and get a little experience over the track, but I asked him about the possible pace scenario in the Preakness, because it looks like there could be a lot of speed.
Looks
in
very
here.
hot,
Of course,
yeah.
we thought the same thing in the Kentucky Derby,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
And he told me that Social Inclusion does not need to be in front. He feels confident that if another horse wants to go, he can sit just off the pace of Social Inclusion. Now, when you look at his past performances, that's really not the case. Here's a horse that has all ones in his running line. He loves to be in front, and you're always playing with fire when you take a horse out of their preferred running style, especially in a big race like this. So I have a feeling that they're going to be on the lead, or they're going to be right up there close to it. I find it hard to believe that they would sit off of it, but Luis feels very confident that if that scenario plays out, that he could handle it.
Okay, that's good to know. Mike, I want to hit on your staff a little bit that you've got down there in Baltimore. I know you and I have a little bond with Sean Clancy, my old boss. I know he's your paddock and horseflesh guy, and I believe you got Jude Feld as well. Talk to me about what the the folks that listen in on Saturday, what they're going to hear, and the strengths of your guys down there.
Yeah, Sean will be with us. He'll be out there doing his thing, describing the horses as they're on the track, talking with different trainers and jockeys. Chad Summers is also part of our broadcast team now. He does an amazing job with all of the interviews, so he'll handle most of that for us throughout the afternoon. And Jeff Bloom, who, of course, is a former jockey. He was with West Point Thoroughbreds for a while. He is now on his own with Bloom Racing. He is going to be my partner in crime up there in the booth, so to speak. He'll be my co-host. So looking forward to that. Jude actually not going to be there for the Preakness. He'll be back for Belmont. He has another obligation on Preakness Day, so he won't be able to make it. But looking forward to having that team together next weekend.
All right, sounds good. And you mentioned Belmont, so let's use that as a little bit of a segue. I know you were very in tune to the big stakes they had last weekend, which will lead us into Belmont Stakes. First of all, we're going to play here the stretch run of the Peter Pan, where Tonalist drew off impressively. Mike, give me your thoughts on that and your thoughts on him heading to the Belmont as a 1.5-mile horse, showing a new dimension Saturday in the Peter Pan when he went to the front. I thought he maybe was a little aggressive in there, but he obviously did it on his own. He did it easily, and then he pulled away late. This is a horse long on promise. I think he finally delivered Saturday. Talk to me about the Peter Pan and your thoughts how it will play out going forward into the Belmont.
Yeah, it was a really nice effort, and he won as easy as you could expect him to win. He was really somewhat geared down at the end to win that race. When you look at it, what might lay ahead for Tonalist, 1.5-mile Belmont Stakes, so many people think that that's a race that is won by a horse that comes from way out of it because of the 1.5-mile distance, but quite often it's a horse that's in a tracking position or maybe even close to the lead, and if Tonalist goes to the front in the Belmont the way he did in the Peter Pan, and if that's now a running style that seems to suit him, it makes him very dangerous, especially if there aren't several speed horses that are signed on. Now, he's a son of Tapit, and Tapit, as we know, the #1 stallion in America right now. He's absolutely red hot, and I don't see any reason why that 1.5 wouldn't be within his scope, especially if he can get away with some softer fractions on the front end. I think he's one that you have to take a look at. He wouldn't be in my first group of horses that I would look at in the Belmont Stakes necessarily, but he's certainly one that, off of that Peter Pan win, deserves a second look.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point too, Mike, in that, like you mentioned, you think 1.5 miles, the Belmont, well, it's a closer's race, but, for every editor's note, there's been so many horses like a Fleet Alex, those tactical horses that kind of win that race off the far turn. And I think that you said that perfectly, Mike, that this is a horse now coming into, plenty of tactical speed, doesn't need to be on the lead. And I think you're right, that's the kind of style that would be preferred in the Belmont. Let's shift gears a little bit, and all these races we're going to talk about are big preps for what is just simply whether or not California Chrome wins Saturday. You can't miss this stakes program on June 8th at Belmont. So we're going to show the Westchester stretch run shortly, and Palace Malice, nothing more than a public workout, Mike, and they're turning him back to one turn for the Met Mile. Me personally, Mike, he's the best handicap horse in the country right now. Just give me your thoughts on his Westchester yesterday and going forward, and what figures to be he's going to dance a lot of big dances this year in New York and beyond.
Yeah, what a division, huh? This older horse division, handicap division, absolutely loaded. I mean, you're talking about now Palace Malice being one of the leaders in that division. You have Game On Dude, you have Lee as well, who is also figuring to be very tough in there. You have Will Take Charge. It's just an absolutely loaded division. And now with Palace Malice winning the way he did in the Westchester, you have to think that, he's among the top horses in this division. Todd Pletcher told me on Saturday morning that based on his New Orleans handicap win last time out on March 29th, he feels like he's right up there with the best in this division right now. And the way he performed on Sunday, albeit against a short field, leads you to believe that Todd Pletcher is right.
Yeah, that New Orleans handicap really was I don't want to say a coming out party, because we've known for a while what Palace Malice could do, but I really think he took it to another level. And I said this to Anthony Mormino on the show last week. Frankly, he made Normandy Invasion, who's a very good horse. He was 4th in the Kentucky Derby, and frankly, he made him look pretty ordinary in that race, which is pretty tough to do.
Yeah, he really did. And, if think about this. What if Wise Dan decides to try the dirt at some point and throw his hat into the ring with the likes of Game On Dude and Mucho Macho Man and Will Take Charge and Palace Malice? This division could be extremely exciting as we get closer to the Breeders' Cup at the end of October.
Yeah, it would be nice. Hopefully we can keep them all sound as we go forward. And, races like the Whitney up at Saratoga with a $1.5 million purse now certainly has to be an attractive spot. So hopefully we can keep them all together, and at some point they'll meet. Next, Mike, we're going to show the Ruffian, and I mentioned this race a little bit before you jumped on with us, and I know 50 Shades of Hay won it, but to me, coming out of the Ruffian, I was really impressed with Grace Hall, who hadn't been out for a year, dead on the board at 5-1, seemingly was taking no money, chased a really hot pace, and I know she won the battle, lost the war, but give me your thoughts exiting the Ruffian and now maybe looking forward to the Phipps, which is arguably shaping up as the race of the year at Belmont.
Yeah, very well could be. And Grace Hall, you're right. She ran a tremendous race in here. I know she didn't win it, but boy, did she run well coming off of that long layoff. And for the winner, 50 Shades of Hay. Brian, if I could have bet the race at the 8th pole,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have bet 50 Shades of Hay. This was kind of Personal Ensign-like when Personal Ensign won the Breeders' Cup, and it looked like she was completely finished, and she runs down winning colors. 50 Shades of Hay, to me, was in that same boat. She was being asked to run by John Velasquez around the far turn. She wasn't really gaining any ground. I think she actually might have dropped back to last at one point when Toasting went by her.
Yeah.
And then she started to kind of accelerate and hit her stride. But even coming to the 8th pole, she still looked like she was going to finish a well-beaten 4th. And all of a sudden, she just shifts to the outside, finds this other gear, and gets up in the final strides. It was a great race for her and a very surprising win. If you watch the race, you don't expect her to get up and win it, but tip your hat to her. She was all hard on Sunday.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mike, because she was really being used and hard-pressed to even keep pace on the outside, and then she just rebroke again, and you're right, and it really gives Baffert and Pegram, I don't know right now which way they're going, but they've got her for the for the Phipps, and the horse that just won the La Troyenne, name escapes me, Midnight.
Midnight Lucky.
Thank you, Midnight Lucky. So they're loaded. They have a big hand as well in a race that right now we're going to get Beholder and Princess of Silmar among others. So that's really shaping up as a monster race. Finally, Mike will hit on the Man of War a little bit, a prep for the Manhattan, which is another one of those $1.5 million Belmont Stakes Day races. Won by Imagining on the lead. Shug, as I mentioned, Shug and Phipps won it for the 3rd year in a row. To me, Mike, maybe a little more workmanlike than anything else. He got loose on the lead and kind of forgot to stop. Give him credit for re-braking, but I'm not sure if this Man of War is going to have a huge impact going forward on the Manhattan, which I would think will have some big new shooters and maybe even some big Euros with the added purse increase. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think so too. And this was a nice win for Imagining. Let's not take anything away from him because he had every chance in the final 1/8 of a mile or 1/16 of a mile to give up the lead, and he just wouldn't do it. He dug in gamely and able to hold on. And I've said this on this show and on my show for a year and a half now. You let Joel Rosario get loose on the front end, and he is the best front-end rider in the sport today. I think he does an amazing job, and he did a great job with Imagining. He doled out the speed kind of in spurts, and then just enough to hold on there at the wire. But tip your hat to Imagining because he really dug in gamely to hold off all the challengers. I thought Grandeur, maybe a little bit disappointing. A lot of people thought he might be the horse to beat in there, and he really had every chance and just didn't quicken through the lane, even though he did hit the board. A little bit disappointing there, but he could certainly move forward off of that effort if he goes, next, as you mentioned, those big races up the road. But, Imagining a really, really nice win here. Whether this does play out as being a key race moving forward, we'll have to wait and see. But a good effort from him.
Yeah, Rosario really has a way of kind of willing a horse home in that last 16th or even those last few strides. One of the strongest riders out there, and certainly, like you said, a great front-end gate rider. Mike, we got a few more seconds here before we wrap it up. Give me your thoughts. Every year we see if we see a rousing Derby winner, we saw it last year with Orb, certainly, and now we see California Chrome, and it just really builds the enthusiasm. I think people want to see a Triple Crown winner. Give me your thoughts on that, Mike, as we look at the Preakness and your feelings on that as we go forward and hopefully end this drought that has somehow reached up 36 years.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe for us, thinking a little bit selfishly, it would be wonderful to have the opportunity to broadcast a potential Triple Crown scenario at Belmont in a few weeks. But for the sport itself, I think it would just be a huge shot in the arm. Now, is it the savior for the sport to have a horse win the Triple Crown? No, it's not. But it certainly puts horse racing back in the forefront with the mainstream media. California Chrome would be on the cover of Sports Illustrated and probably ESPN, the magazine, and you would be all over SportsCenter and all over your local newscast in the evenings. So it certainly puts horse racing back in the forefront, at least for a short time period. Again, I think if he runs his race, and the 2 weeks do not affect him, if he runs his race in the Preakness, he's the best horse in there. There's no doubt about it. From a human interest perspective, it would be a great story with his trainer, his owners, the whole story behind him. It's just a great thing that people can latch onto. And for the sport, it's a great opportunity to promote this and say, hey, you know what? You don't need to be a millionaire to win our biggest race. You can compete in this game at a very high level for a modest fee if you just get lucky. It's a game that's built on hopes and dreams, and this is a dream coming true.
Yeah, that's well said, Mike. It's not always the sport of kings that everyone wants to make it out to be, and this horse is certainly showing that now. Mike, we're going to let you go. Have a great week down in Baltimore. I'll try to stop by and say hi. Great work as always. Mike Penna, horseracingradio.net. And we appreciate your time, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, that's going to lead us up to our second break right now. When we come back, we're going to have Bob Ehalt of ESPN.com. Bob's going to wrote a couple recent columns on California Chrome. We're going to get into that, get some of his thoughts exiting the Derby, going into the Preakness, and then we'll look back at a few races as well, Toneless being one of them. We're also going to talk about a horse, Kid Cruz, who we haven't really hit on yet. That's kind of maybe a little outsider that has a chance in the Preakness. So when we come back, Bob Ehalt of ESPN.com.
This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, and amazing Vegas-style atmosphere. The Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Welcome back to America's Best Racing. I'm Brian Nadeau, and now we're happy to be joined by Bob Ehalt of ESPN.com. And Bob, thanks for joining us. I know with the Preakness looming, you wrote a couple columns exiting the Derby, looking forward to the Preakness. I want to thank you for joining us.
Oh, no problem, Brian. A pleasure to be with you.
First off, Bob, I read your column last night. It's feeling like last year again. I thought it was a great read, and I really think it sums up what probably everyone is thinking going in to the Preakness after we had another, dominant, rousing Derby winner, Orb last year, and California Chrome this year. So why don't you just give the audience a little bit of what you were talking about there, and maybe your feelings going into the Preakness, as hopefully we have we can finally solve that Triple Crown drought.
Yeah, I think one of the key factors about the optimism a lot of people feel at this point is that California Chrome was a favorite. He was a division leader coming in, and he wins the Derby. And that's the key part, I think, of trying to be a Triple Crown winner. You want a horse who is not only a quality horse, but has a very strong foundation, who could stand up through the rigors of all three races. And certainly California Chrome is built in that model. Whether he's going to do it, who knows? But certainly, I would think, a little bit like last year. I think what people were very excited about Orb, not only was he the favorite, but then he faced what really kind of shaped up as a weak field at Pimlico, and I think that's the same type of thing that we're looking at here with California Chrome. Unfortunately, Orb wasn't the right horse. He never won another race again after the Derby, and certainly wasn't the horse we all thought. We'll find out about California Chrome this year. I think, though, California Chrome, I would say, I think has a much better chance of winning the Preakness than Orb turned out having.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that as well, Bob. And my question to you, and I kind of got this reading your piece, is that do you think that the fans actually believe it, or is it more that they want to see it and are more optimistic and hopeful? Because I think there's a fine line there. I agree with California Chrome. He seems pretty legit, and he's done, all that can be asked for him. And Orb did for that matter last year, but Orb to me was a little more workmanlike. Do you think that when we see this, dominant, rousing Derby winner, it's actually going to happen, or maybe more hope that it will happen?
Well, I think it's a good mixture of both, because it is such a good, heartwarming story about the connections. You have the horse from the obscure sire out of the small one-horse stable with the 77-year-old trainer winning the Derby for the first time. I mean, it's a great story. I think that people can embrace, and certainly if you have a Triple Crown champion, he'd be the kind that you would like to see. I also think, though, too, that he certainly has proven himself on the racetrack in the last 5 races that he's won, that he's won convincingly. There hasn't been anything where you kind of look back and say, oh, well, maybe he shouldn't have won. No, he was the best horse in those races, and unfortunately, they all run out of gas at some point, but the question certainly is when that's going to happen, and so far there's really no indication that it's going to at least be at Pimlico. Yeah,
and I think a nice segue there, Bob, and you mentioned that 77-year-old trainer, Art Sherman. I know one of the quotes highlighted in your story, and I think this is maybe the quote that has resonated across the country, where Art Sherman mentioned he doesn't want to run this horse back on 2 weeks rest, and as we know, that's not going to happen. You're going to the Preakness, it's barring something unforeseen, Grindstone, or I think Spendebuck didn't go, but barring anything unforeseen, you're going to the Preakness. So do you get any feel one way or another, Bob, that, maybe, and we're going to get into your other piece about the speed figures, so maybe that, there's a little dip in his form in the 2 weeks rest? Is it a legitimate concern, or is it maybe more of a concern simply because he's never done it before?
I think there's a bit of a concern because he's never done it before, and he has been going so well on the kind of regimen that he's been racing with much bigger gaps between the races. What makes it a little bit, what makes it also hard is that for the most part he only has, I believe there might be 2 rivals who ran in the Derby, another one who maybe ran in the Oaks. So other horses that he's going against are probably going to be a little bit more rested. The key question, though, is rest alone isn't enough. You have to be good. How good are the others? And certainly I just don't think it's an outstanding group. Probably if there's a main concern, it would be social inclusion, and you do have to wonder a little bit about if that bruised foot that he suffered last week is going to come back to haunt you. You really don't want to hear at all about any kind of physical problem when you're looking for a horse that's trying to win a Triple Crown race.
Yeah, I think that's well said. It's hard enough to win the Preakness, much less to do it maybe with a little nick. Bobby also wrote a really neat, especially for me as a handicapper and as a visual handicapper, more so than a speed handicapper. You wrote a great story, California Chrome versus the Speed Gurus for America's Best Racing, and there's, it's been a point that's really been harped on almost over the last week or so. California Chrome, no matter what kind of figure guy you are, 97 on the buyer, I want to say 7.5 on the sheets. Maybe you can correct me on that, but whatever service you like, it was a slow race, and I thought your piece was really interesting in that. Here we have a horse, and we're going to show the stretch run of the Derby while we get into this, but here we have a horse that could have won by more, but basically just thumped a field of overmatched horses, yet he did it in, frankly, incredibly slow time, came home in 26 and change. So, Bob, talk to me about that story and, the fine line between maybe going too overboard in what was a really slow number off a race that was really dominant visually.
Well, I think the key thing to remember through all this He was slow in the Derby, but as slow as he was faster than everyone else.
Yes,
that's, I think, the part that stands out the most. The question is, who has the ability to run faster than him? And not a lot of them have shown that kind of ability. The most interesting thing, I think, in the story is how speed handicappers would drool over the possibility of the filly Untappable running against California Chrome. She seems to have a really huge edge over California Chrome in terms of speed figures, at least on the Ragozin scale. But it doesn't sound at this point like she will be making any kind of appearance in the Triple Crown. The key part, though, that comes back to haunt California Chrome with the speed figures being so mediocre, he doesn't on paper have that kind of edge where when you get into a setting perhaps like the Belmont Stakes, where some of the horses who were second, third, fourth behind him are possibly going to meet him on 5 weeks rest, being pointed for the Belmont and the potential to run one of their top races. Meanwhile, California Chrome, who isn't all that much faster, is going to come in off an effort in the Preakness that might be draining. Certainly is going to make it difficult for him to be at his top. Because of that narrow spread, it's not all that inconceivable that those horses can turn the table on him in the Belmont Stakes. And there's certainly a good number of horses who have that kind of legitimate shot. Certainly, you saw those horses in the Derby who were closing a bit on him. I don't think they were going to catch him in the Derby under any circumstances, but at 1.5 miles with another race under his belt, maybe he's a little bit susceptible, just like if we go back to when Smarty Jones seemed like he was going to win easily, and Birdstone kind of jumped out of nowhere and beat him in the Belmont Stakes in that final furlong. We'll see if that's the case in the Belmont, if he gets past the Preakness.
Yeah, I think,
and I think in terms of speed figures, the only one there that he really does have, they say he has a major problem from, would be Social Inclusion.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Bob. It might not be the Preakness that trips him up, but that third race in 5 weeks in Elmont could be a tough one. Let's look at the Preakness, though, a little bit. We're going to show video of Kid Cruz winning the Tessio, and to me, he's a very interesting horse, not only because he has a win over the track, but he's a closer in a race that, and I know we thought the Derby was going to be fast, but this Preakness to me looks blazingly fast with some of the horses that basically have to go, the Pablo Del Montes, the Bayerns, maybe even Social Inclusion. So as we show video of Kid Cruz winning the Tessio and somewhat of a, I guess it'll be workmanlike I'll use to describe it. Your thoughts on Kid Cruz and maybe anyone else, not named California Chrome as we embark on the Preakness Saturday?
Well, I think you make a good point, and certainly the Preakness is going to show us one thing. I thought one of the great things that could have impacted the Kentucky Derby were a couple of noses and necks. If Social Inclusion doesn't lose second by a nose in the wood, he's probably running in the Derby. Bayern too, let him win a photo for second. And instead of running in the Derby trial, there's a chance he's running in the Derby, and the pace in the Derby would no way have been that slow. California Chrome, not that he's on the lead, but he would have had to run harder to chase it. Well, now we're going to see that scenario in Pimlico. He's going to have a legitimate pace to chase in those two horses, and it depends here on your belief in California Chrome. You're either going to have the position one. He's going to win, or three, I'll say that two. He's going to, he's just going to be burned, he's just going to be out-kicked on the front end. Or three, the horse who's going to beat him is not going to be a horse that runs with him early. It's going to be a horse that capitalizes on what happens late. And that seems to be, I think, the most logical scenario. If you're going to beat him, that is probably going to be a horse on the front end, on the closing, and certainly Kid Cruz might be one of them. I think Ride on Curlin might be another one.
Yeah, I think you said it well. It's a fascinating. Maybe it's not the best betting race we've seen, with a legitimate odds-on horse, but if nothing else, it's a fascinating handicapping puzzle in terms of pace and. Social Inclusion to me, thought he might have been a little bit of a fraud. I thought his wood was huge. I really did, and I wish he wasn't going into this off of maybe a little minor injury. But I think you said it well in that California Chrome is really, probably for the first time since the San Felipe, is really going to have to run hard, because in the Santa Anita Derby he didn't have to do that, and frankly in the Kentucky Derby he didn't have to do that. So I think Saturday, if nothing else, he's really going to have to prove his mettle against not a great field, but at least against a field that's going to make him run for the first time in a few months.
Yeah, and that's where I think we'll really find out how good he is. And if he succeeds in that test, well, now you got to turn around on just 3 weeks rest and come back and beat and try to beat the horses who were the closest to you in the Kentucky Derby, where fatigue might set in, where the distance may come back to haunt you, and perhaps there might be even a couple of other new shooters out there who might be even more formidable than the ones that he's facing at Pimlico.
Yeah, and speaking of those, Bob, let's just briefly, before I let you go, hit on Toneless. We'll show his stretch run, winning the Peter Pan in the slop Saturday at Belmont Park. Personally, for me, it was a breakthrough effort. He did it on the lead. He seemed to be doing it pretty comfortably as well. Your thoughts on him going a mile and a half with a win over the track, and catching some maybe California Chrome as a tired horse, and kind of being that hot new shooter, so to speak, going onto the Belmont?
He certainly has the possibility to be a horse to worry about in the Belmont. I mean, he showed that he can, that he can handle the track. He's based at Belmont. He has a trainer in Christophe Clement who knows how to get a horse to go a good distance of ground. The Peter Pan in recent years hasn't been the great barometer of success for the Belmont that you would expect it to be. They've only had, I believe, I think Drosselmeyer might have been one of the few that came out of it in recent years. But I think that this one does have has a little bit more going for him than some of the more recent winners. And certainly I think he deserves the respect in the Belmont, depending how that entire field comes together. And as reflective of what's going on about the race, there certainly was even an allowance winner at Belmont last week, a horse named Bay of Plenty. I don't know if he's going to be ready for the Belmont Stakes, but he's been running in the kind of fashion that is impressing speed handicappers. And if you want to look for a horse who might be a factor in races like the Haskell, maybe the Travers, even horses like that, that will make it an interesting test later in the year to see if that with those weak speed figures that the Triple Crown heroes have been doing, will it hold up later in the year when they run into horses like, say, a Bay of Plenty and maybe Tonality? Yeah, Bay of Plenty, for those who aren't familiar, is a McLaughlin Darley horse that really, typically, like Kieran likes to do, really blew up once they gave him Lasix. And like Bob said, he's been running off the screen in his last two. And I think Bob Kieran even mentioned, albeit an outside possibility, I think he mentioned the Dwyer would be a more logical spot, but he said he wasn't adverse to at least looking at the Belmont. And, he would be another exciting, we know those Darley horses, how well they're bred, exciting new shooter, just another horse to deal with for California Chrome should he arrive at Elmont looking for a Triple Crown. Yeah, that's going to be the interesting possibility, because I would have faith that Kieran, if he believes his horse is not seasoned enough to handle the mile and a half of the Belmont Stakes, he's not going to do it. So if he shows up, he must have some faith in that horse, and I would think that's going to be a very convincing sign for a horse like him. Other than that, yeah, as you say, the Dwyer should be a nice setup, which will position him nicely for races like the Haskell and possibly the Travers. And like they said, maybe later in the year we'll see Untappable maybe taking on the Colts in a race like the Haskell, where all of a sudden, we may get a whole different idea of what this 3-year-old crop looks like. And then who knows, there might the horses we're talking about now may not be the ones that really are stealing the headlines by the time the Breeders' Cup rolls around. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Bob. All right, as we let you go, I just want to say thanks for joining us. Bob Ehalt of ESPN.com and America's Best Racing. Bob, enjoy the Preakness. I'm sure we'll catch up with you down the line. Thank you, Brian. Good talking with you. Take care. So we'll go to our final break here on the Monday edition of Racing Across America. And when I come back, a few more news and notes, and then we'll wrap it up for you.
This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey, race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to the Monday edition of Racing Across America. Just a few quick minutes left. Brian Nadeau filling in for Seth Merrow. Hopefully Seth will be back with us shortly. A couple more news and notes to hit on. Big announcement down in South Florida this week. Gulfstream Park, which has just got that mammoth Rainbow Six that's carrying over $6 million now, $6.119 million. Initially, plans were to take this all the way to the official closing day, which was June 29th. Tim Ritvo, the Gulfstream president, said he talked to some fans, some big players. They wanted it to close being the last payoff, mandatory payoff day on Memorial Day, which is May 26th. So the announcement this week was that they will offer a one-time mandatory payout on May 26th. So basically what that means, there's 6 racing days left from now. Gulfstream's racing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, from now until Memorial Day, May 26th. So if it's not hit in those 6 racing days, this thing will carry over. Again, it's going up about $200,000 a day. If you're not familiar with the bet, it only pays out the entire pool if there's one single winner. And it's a 20-cent minimum bet. So now there's getting upwards of $400,000 a day. I know Seth has talked about it. He's had some success with it. Really gives a small-time player a little bang for his buck. You can put a $30 ticket together, make a sizable score. I mean, me personally, I don't think you need to try to win the $6 million. That's just not going to happen, especially with so much money in the pool. But I think, you know, playing a $30, $50 ticket gives you a legitimate shot at $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 without, you know, going too far into your bankroll or your budget. So what's going to happen is now, if this carries over those next 6 days, we'll probably be in the $7 to $8 million range of dead carryover money, meaning that's money that has to be paid out to the rest of the country, regardless of if there's a winning ticket or not. Now we compound that with all the money that's going to be put into the pool. People are speculating, you know, $15 to $20 million. I don't think it's unreasonable because it's all going to be there for the taking. It has to be paid out, whether there's 2 winners or 20,000 winners. It's got to be paid out, and it's really going to make Monday, May 26th, legitimately one of the biggest days in you know, wagering racing history. Undoubtedly the biggest pick six that's ever happened, and you know, you can play it for a 20-cent minimum. Again, it's you simply have to play it. So that we're going to keep an eye on that as it goes forward. Like I said, 6 racing days left, and and now it's so much money in the pool, very, very unlikely that it gets hit. And it's not a great product right now down at Gulfstream, smaller field. So I would think if we have this conversation at May 26th, we're going to be talking about a lot of money in the kitty down there. And it's something definitely to follow and look forward to. So that's going to wrap it up for the Monday edition of Racing Across America. I'm Brian Nadeau filling in for Seth Merrow, and I want to thank you for joining me.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.